Episode 4 opens with Lee-en, who is seen kissing Hee-ju. He explains that there is a reporter nearby taking their photos, which is why he did it. Hee-ju responds, "No problem at all, let's share a proper kiss so the reporter can get a great angle." However, Lee-en doesn't go along with it. Instead, he simply begins to smile. The next morning, as Lee-en was heading to a meeting, the maids nearby whispered to one another, "Did you see what happened last night? Were those two actually kissing?" Lee-en blushes, he glances in their direction, and they quickly scatter. The meeting centers on the question of whether or not Lee-en will make an official announcement regarding his marriage. The ministers examine the photograph of the kiss and dismiss it, suggesting that it amounts to nothing significant. They advise Lee-en to simply call off the wedding. Lee-en retorts, "We did share a kiss. Are you suggesting that I should back out now? That is simply not an option." Sang-won then confronts Lee-en, revealing, "I have learned that Hee-ju is of illegitimate birth." However, Jong-yu steps in to support Lee-en, proposing, "Why not tell the public that you have just begun dating, acknowledging that, while you are seeing each other, you aren't yet certain about marriage?" Lee-en agrees, saying, "Very well, I shall do exactly that." He adds, "Incidentally, Hee-ju will be staying at my private residence." Sang-won immediately objects to this arrangement. Jong-yu intervenes again, stating, "Fine, you may allow her to stay there, but you cannot reside there with her. You must remain at the palace. If you live together, rumors are bound to flare up once more." Lee-en accepts this condition. Meanwhile, Sang-won speaks with Irene. Upon learning the news, Irene flies into a rage, exclaiming, "So now Hee-ju has managed to secure a place to live here. If she stays here, her social standing will rise significantly. People will start to recognize her and take her side, and that simply cannot happen. I told you that you had to reject the proposal. Why didn't you listen to me?" Sang-won replies, "I tried my absolute best, but there was nothing I could do. Besides, the fault lies with you. You shouldn't have said all those things to Lee-en in the first place. If you hadn't done anything, this problem would have resolved itself on its own. I have a plan. However, we aren't shown exactly what that plan entails." Meanwhile, Hee-ju is at a private residence with Lee-en's staff, watching a news report about herself on TV. On the broadcast, a reporter had brought in a guest, a man who was pontificating on whether or not Hee-ju was a suitable match for Lee-en. Hee-ju asks the staff, "Who is that man?" They inform her that his name is Hook Pang. He used to serve as the royal spokesperson. In fact, it was he who announced last year that the late king's death was not an accident, but a murder, a revelation that subsequently got him blacklisted. Just then, Lee-en arrives, and all the staff members quickly scatter. Hee-ju watches the clip of their kissing scene on the news and says to Lee-en, "I told you we needed to give them a better angle. But you didn't listen to me. In this footage, you can't even tell if we're actually kissing or not. We need to be a little sexier, a little more shameless, so the public takes us seriously." She repeatedly runs her tongue over her lips. Lee-en watches her intently, recalling the scene from the previous night and how they had ended up kissing. At that moment, Hee-ju moves closer to him. She cups his face in her hands and asks, "Are you free? I want to go somewhere with you, somewhere that will make people believe we actually like each other." Lee-en replies, "Yes, I have the time." In the next scene, we see butler Young-moon helping Hee-ju get ready. He is styling her hair. When she steps out, Lee-en looks at her and says, "You don't look right." Hee-ju immediately rushes back inside. She changes her outfit and emerges wearing simple, casual clothes, with her hair left loose and disheveled. Lee-en nods and says, "Now that looks right. Take my arm." Hee-ju does exactly that, and the two of them head out together. They were now seated in the car, where Hee-ju was checking her reflection in the mirror. Lee-en noticed this. Hee-ju asked him to hold the mirror for her, explaining that she needed to fix her makeup. Lee-en did exactly as she asked. Hee-ju remarked to Lee-en, "I told you you're old-fashioned. You really should have worn something nicer." But Lee-en retorted, "Choi is talking about you, not me." In the next scene, we see Hee-ju bringing them to their destination, a baseball game that was just about to start, in which Jong-yu was participating. Hee-ju produced a set of matching outfits. She told Lee-en, "I've already put mine on. You should wear yours too, so everyone thinks we're a serious couple." However, Choi interjected, saying that Lee-en couldn't do that. Wearing matching outfits could spark a controversy. Hee-ju looked a bit upset and told Choi, Fine, you wear it then. Choi looked delighted at the prospect, but Lien immediately stepped in and said, no, you can't wear it either. Later, they headed inside. Ju spotted her brother and sister-in-law right in front of her. Ju was just about to approach Ju when he noticed that Lien was with her. He greeted Lien first. Ju then introduced himself. Lien replied, I already know who you are, you're Ju's brother. She's told me a lot about you. Ju, curious, began to ask Lien what exactly Ju had said about him, but Lien offered no specific details. Afterward, Lien shook hands with Da-young. Da-young also introduced herself. Lien asked, what is your father's name? Choi chimed in to explain that her father was a former minister of justice. Now, everyone began cheering for the game. Ju, in particular, kept her eyes fixed on Jong-yu and shouted his name at the top of her lungs. Watching this, Lien felt a twinge of jealousy. Back at the residence, we see the court lady, Sunhwa, arriving with a meal for our king, Lan. However, the food accidentally spills onto the floor. She becomes visibly upset. Lan reassures her, saying, it's all right, I can still eat it. Just as he begins to eat, Sunhwa interjects, insisting, it is no longer fit to be eaten. Choi had previously suggested to Lan that they could summon the royal guards to the location, but Lan had firmly refused. Now, everyone was watching the Jong-yu game. Later, Jong-yu spots Ju and approaches the pair. The camera focuses on Jong-yu, but it soon becomes apparent that both Lan and Ju are present as well. The crowd began hailing them as the best couple, and urged them to share a kiss. However, they politely but firmly declined, stating that they could not do such a thing. When they finally stepped outside, Ju anticipated that photographs of her would be taken. However, this did not happen, as Lan's bodyguards immediately surrounded them, shielding them from view with umbrellas. Ju asked in frustration, how am I supposed to show myself to anyone like this? But Lan offered no response. Ju tried bouncing up and down to make herself visible, but Choi, one of the bodyguards, simply raised his umbrella higher each time. Jong-yu then spoke to Ju, reminding her, last time, you promised that the treat would be on you. Come on, let's go grab a meal together. Ju agreed, saying, okay. She then turned to Lan and told him, you go on ahead by yourself, the two of us are going out to eat. Lan replied to Ju, that simply won't do. We arrived together, if we leave separately, what will the public think? It would look rather strange. Ju paused to consider this, then asked, all right, then what do you want to do? Lan replied, I'm coming along with you. He opened the car door for Ju, and she stepped inside the vehicle. In the following scene, we see the trio arriving at a restaurant. Ju turns to Lan and says, go ahead and start eating first. However, Jong-yu explains that Lien cannot eat this because it contains raw meat, something Lien is forbidden from consuming. Ju asks, what is the deal? He can't eat street food, and he can't eat raw meat either. Why is that? Jong-yu replies that this restriction is due to a history of food poisoning. Ju looks at Lien and remarks, you seem capable of doing just about anything, yet you can't do these simple things. Is this even truly living? Is there anything else you can't do? Lien drifts into a flashback of his past, where he is playing with his brother, Leon. Leon, dressed in his crown prince attire, says to Lien, you should try wearing this too. Lien puts it on. Just then, their father arrives. He sees Lien, slaps him, and rips the outfit off him. He sternly tells him, you must never stand in the king's way. You will obey his every command. And never, ever wear red, for that color belongs solely to the king. Lien looks at Ju, then glances at the raw meat, and says, you are free to eat this now, before our marriage, but you won't be able to afterward. So, go ahead and enjoy it. In the next scene, Lien returns to the palace accompanied by Choi. They are immediately confronted by court lady Jin Suk, who scolds Lien, demanding, why did you go to that baseball practice session? Lien replies, don't worry, there wasn't a single reporter there. Jin Suk retorts, then what about the fish restaurant? Why did you go there? Lien answers, I didn't eat anything while I was there. Jin Suk declares, I don't care about that. What matters now is that I must teach Ju how things work here and guide her through the proper palace rituals, and you are not to interfere. The scene shifts to the following morning, where Ju is at her private residence. She finishes getting ready and steps outside. All the servants rush forward, eager to attend to her needs and serve her breakfast, but Ju simply tells them, "I'm fine. I don't eat breakfast early in the morning, instead, I step outside. There, court lady 𝗖𝗂𝗃 is watching me." Ju approaches her and reveals her identity, handing her a business card. 𝗖𝗃 wants to reveal who she is as well, but just then, Lee calls Ju. Ju begins talking on the phone, gets into her car, and drives away. 𝗖𝗃 continues to watch her go. Upon arriving at the company, Ju speaks with Lee over the phone. Lee asks, "Did you really do that?" He adds that 𝗖𝗃 must be annoyed by this, as she likely wanted to teach Ju a lesson. Choi also chimes in, asking Lee, "Weren't you too close back in your school days? Looking at you both now, it certainly doesn't seem like it." Back at the company, we see Hyung briefing Ju on her schedule for the day. Ju exclaims, "What is all this? It's way too much. We're going to be incredibly busy today. Can't you cancel a few things on the schedule?" But Hyung replies, "I've already cut it down as much as I could." Later, she brings up the subject of the kiss, noting, "Your cheeks have turned red." Ju denies it, saying, "That's not true. Why would I be blushing? It was just a casual, insignificant kiss." Hyung then reveals something else. None of this what's happening between you two has ever happened with Lee before. He's never even dated anyone in the past. There hasn't been a single rumor about his love life. Hearing this, Ju falls silent for a moment, wondering why he has never dated anyone. Hyung then urges her, "Hurry up and get ready. We need to head to the tailor's shop for your outfit fitting." Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see Da-young and Tae-ju out shopping. An upcoming event is being discussed, but only Ju has received an invitation. Da-young remarks, "Even your father wasn't invited to this one. Just look at how far Ju has come. She's become a truly significant figure. We simply must arrange her marriage to Lee. We need to do everything we can to support her in this. If that happens, she will leave the castle group, and it will belong to you forever." Hearing this, Tae-ju is delighted and says, "All right, that is exactly what we will do." Da-young suggests, "We need to prepare a gift so we can present it to Ju." Ju arrives at a tailor shop accompanied by Hyung. Hyung spots the car parked outside and asks, "Where is your red car?" Ju replies, "It's currently having some issues. It was involved in a crash recently." Hyung asks, "Who did that?" But Ju simply says, "I don't know." After finishing their shopping, they arrive at the private residence. Lee's staff members are waiting at the entrance to take their belongings. Jin-sook, who happens to be nearby, spots Ju and instructs her to come inside. In the next scene, we see them inside. Jin-sook is holding a cane. She instructs Ju on how to conduct herself there. "Your gait must be like this. Your hands must be positioned like that. Now, walk for me." Ju attempts to follow her instructions. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the mansion, we see Ah-room speaking to her son, Lee, whose head is bowed low. Ah-room raises her voice and says, "It doesn't matter if you are short in stature, you must always hold your head high." We then cut back to Ju, whom Jin-sook is now attempting to teach proper exercises, though Ju struggles to master them. After much instruction, Lee arrives on the scene. Ju spots him, cries out in relief, and clings to him tightly. She pleads with him, "Take Jin-sook away from here. Otherwise, she's going to kill me tonight. I won't be able to get a wink of sleep." Lee laughs and replies, "All right." Jin-sook asks Lee, "What are you doing here? The mansion gates are about to close for the night. You should leave." Lee responds, "Very well, but you must come with me. That is an order." In the following scene, we see Lee inside the mansion with Young-woo. The two of them are playing a game of Go. Lee tells Young-woo, "Just try stopping the wedding for once. You ought to at least give it a shot, shouldn't you?" However, Young-woo simply replied, "I am not you." While playing a game of Go, he remarks, "I possess enough power to bring this entire country to ruin." He then brings up the fire incident, stating, "I've taken care of that matter. Perhaps Iron won't be able to do anything now." Meanwhile, we see Jin-sook with Ju, teaching her about the family's rituals. Jin-sook explains when they performed their very first ritual. It was at the time of Leon's mother's death. The second ritual took place upon the death of Leon's father, and the third following the death of his brother. Hearing this, Hui Ju becomes emotional. She begins to weep and asks to be left alone in her room for a while. Using this as an excuse, she slips away. Once inside her room, she looks up the news reports regarding these events. Leon's mother died in a car accident, his father suffered a fatal heart attack, and his brother perished in a fire. Could none of this have been prevented? She asks herself. She then recalls Leon's earlier warning, stay away from iron. Hui Ju murmurs to herself, perhaps that is exactly why he told me to keep my distance. She tries calling Leon, but he does not pick up. Elsewhere, we see Leon in the company of Iron. At this moment, Iron introduces him to Jin, a member of the King family, describing her as her closest friend. Leon immediately senses Iron's true intentions. He asks Jin, I heard you were ill, yet you seem to be in perfect health. Later, he questions court lady Seong Hui about Jin's specific ailment. However, Seong Hui is at a loss for words, as there is no actual illness to speak of. Leon then instructs Seong Hui, Iron is to undergo a medical examination 3 times a day. Tell the physician about this, that is my order. He then left. Jin asks Irene, what happens now? She senses that Leon is troubled. Leon, meanwhile, speaks to Choi, instructing him, find out who this Jaein from the King family is. Investigate his background. Choi replies, understood. By the way, Hui Ju left you a missed call. Later, Leon calls Hui Ju back. Leon asks, what did you want to say? I'm very busy, so make it quick. Hui Ju replies, I will always stand by your side. You don't need to worry about anything. Leon then tells Choi, I'm going to the private residence today to meet Hui Ju. Choi objects, that's not possible, Jang Yu expressly forbade you from doing that. But Leon insists, it doesn't matter, I have to go. Elsewhere, we see King Lan leaving his school. He accidentally bumps into another child, causing the child's book to fall to the ground. Lan says, it's all right, just be more careful next time, and hands the book back to him. As he walks home, he notices the neighborhood children playing nearby. He says to himself, I wish I could play, too. Jong had arrived to pick him up. Lan tells him, I have a request, please grant it. We then cut to the private residence, where Jin Suk is giving Hui Ju a lesson. She places clay pots on Hui Ju's head and shoulders and instructs her to walk. However, Hui Ju keeps dropping them every time. Just then, Lan arrives. Hui Ju asks him, what brings you here? Lan replies, I need to see my uncle. Hui Ju asks, do you have an appointment? When he answers no, he looks visibly upset. Hui Ju smiles and says, it's okay. Let's play a game. If you win, I'll grant your wish. He, too, gets ready for the occasion. Meanwhile, we see Daeyoung arriving to meet her friends. She had been quite busy lately. Daeyoung shares, I love my husband, Hlae Ju, very deeply. Our love grows stronger every single day. I apologize for arriving late. One of the girls then asks her, how did you manage to go against your father's wishes and marry Hlae Ju? Especially since your father was ruined shortly thereafter. Daeyoung replies, perhaps you don't follow the news. Don't you know that Hui Ju is currently dating Leon, and they are planning to get married very soon? In the next scene, we see her in a car with Hlae Ju. She screams, I'm going to kill that bitch. Why was she asking me such questions? Hlae Ju responds, go ahead, you can do it. You have my full support. We then cut to the private residence, where a game is about to begin. All the staff members, along with Jong Yu, participate in the game. After some time, Leon emerges as the winner. Afterward, he tells Hui Ju, grant me my wish. Hui Ju asks, which wish? Leon reminds her, you promised that if I won the game, you would grant my wish. Don't you remember? Hui Ju teases him, replying, yes, I remember. What is it that you want? Later, Leon steps outside. He spots a red car and declares, I want to take a ride in that. Seong Hui objects, that's not possible. That car hasn't been used in days. You can't do that. Leon lies down on the ground and insists, I am the king. I must take a ride in it. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, Leon has already taken his seat in the car and is on his way to meet Hui Ju. They, too, were compelled to accede to Leon's demand, and he had settled himself inside the vehicle. Jong-Yoo tells Hee-ju, "I'll follow right behind you in another car, just to ensure that nothing goes wrong." Hee-ju agrees, and shortly thereafter, they set off. On the way, Jing-Yoo asks Hee-ju over the phone if everything is alright. However, Lan interjects, saying that nothing is fine. The car had been moving along smoothly, but Hee-ju suddenly accelerates. A moment later, she discovers that the brakes have failed. Jing-Yoo also notices that the car is speeding out of control. He asks Hee-ju what happened, and she confirms that the brakes are not working. She then tells Lan to fasten his seatbelt. Lan complies, and Hee-ju somehow manages to steer the car onto a bridge. She maneuvers the vehicle close to the railing, scraping against it in an attempt to reduce their speed. Just then, another car appears directly in front of them. The driver positions his vehicle to make contact with theirs, aiming to slow them down. The car begins to decelerate as it scrapes against the vehicle ahead, a car that had suddenly cut in front of them to block Hee-ju's path. Hee-ju's car was hurtling toward it at high speed, but after a violent collision and scrape, it finally comes to a halt. A man steps out of the car, blood trickling down his forehead. It is none other than Lian, who looks directly at Hee-ju. Hee-ju looks back at him, and with that, the episode comes to an end. We will meet again in episode 5. Until then, goodbye.